but I don't think we need to introduce ourselves. We discussed that and came to the conclusion that we should not lose time, but we will have a short introduction, and maybe when that has been done, and I will say something which will take a few minutes. So maybe we can use the time for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay, I agree.
Okay, so then Jessica, maybe.
Yes, thank you so much. And first of all, I would like to welcome you all.
Приветствовать вас всех на данном семинаре.
I think it's the third seminar that we have jointly in a collaboration between Sweden and Kazakhstan. Before I continue, I would like to say that in the bottom of your screen, you have a globe when it says interpretation. And if you dot that globe, you can choose the language you would like to hear this seminar in. Meaning also that we have a simultaneously translation of the seminar. So I would like all the speakers to have that in mind during their presentations. This seminar on EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, on packaging waste. And we are very happy from the Swedish side to be able to share our experience. We have been working with this for some years now. So from our side, you will have the opportunity to listen to Veine Wikvist, who today is the senior advisor and the former CEO of Waste Sweden. He will give you an overall introduction to the EPR packaging system in Sweden. You will also have the possibility to listen to Bengt Lagerman, who is the CEO of Returpack, and he will discuss the deposit refund system for PET and aluminium cans. You will also have the possibility to listen to Henrik Nilsson, who is the CEO of the Producers Umbrella Organization, and he will talk more about the EPR packaging and collection system. And then you will also have the possibility to ask questions. So we will have questions and answers after the presentations, but please do not hesitate to write your questions in the chat if there is something that pops up in your mind during the presentations. So once again, you are most welcome, and I hope that we can have a fruitful seminar and a joint discussion, because the meaning is to share experience. So with this short introduction, I would like to welcome our Swedish ambassador, Mats Foyer, to say some introduction words too.
Спасибо, Jessica. Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые участники, я Mats Foyer, посол Швеции в Республике Казахстан. От имени посольства позвольте приветствовать вас на вебинаре, посвященному опыту Швеции и ЕС в области расширенной ответственности производителей. В течение последних лет Швеция с интересом наблюдает за мерами, которые Казахстан реализует для модернизации системы управления отходами и снижения загрязнения воздуха в рамках перехода к зеленой экономике. И мы поддерживаем стремление Казахстана сделать всю экономику более экологически устойчивой. Вместо того, чтобы смириться с изменением климата и нехваткой ресурсов, Швеция стала первопроходцем в отрасли переработки отходов, объединив технологии, социальную ответственность и экономическую эффективность. В деятельности посольства по продвижению экономического сотрудничества между нашими странами мы стремимся уделять приоритетное внимание областям, в которых шведские решения могут способствовать переходу Казахстана к максимальному экологически чистым технологиям. В настоящее время посольство совместно с Ассоциацией практикующих экологов в лице ее председателя госпожи Лаури Маликовой, а также с участием шведских экспертов в лице госпожи Джессики Магнусон и господина Вейна Виквиста, продолжает прорабатывать возможность организации официального визита шведской бизнес-делегации в области управления отходами в Казахстан в этом году. Швеция рассматривает данный визит в качестве более широкого подхода к вопросу снижения воздействия на климат, защиты природных ресурсов, экологизации экономики, разработки новых бизнес-моделей, а также для дальнейшего укрепления взаимовыгодных отношений между Швецией и Казахстаном. Поэтому посольство признательно за участие, вклад Министерства экологии, геологии и природных ресурсов Республики Казахстан и акимата города Нур-Султан в предшествующие сегодняшнему вебинару встречи, которые состоялись в рамках политического онлайн-диалога Швеции и Казахстана по вопросам управления отходами. Я также председателем акимата города Алматы за принятие нашего приглашения и присоединение к сегодняшнему вебинару. В качестве следующего шага посольство видит организацию серии вебинаров по вопросу существующих задач и способов их решения в области управления отходами в Казахстане с участием шведских экспертов и представителей профильных государственных органов Казахстана. Сегодняшний вебинар станет первым в этой серии, и его целью является обмен информацией и опытом в области расширенной ответственности производителей с уделением основного внимания использованной упаковке и электронной технике. Мы обсудим бизнес-модели и финансовые решения, а также методы спора и переработки. Я надеюсь, что серия вебинаров станет успешным продолжением двустороннего диалога между шведскими экспертами, представителями шведского бизнеса и казахстанской стороной о направлениях развития и тенденциях, инвестиционных планах, возможном сотрудничестве в текущих и планируемых проектах в Казахстане. Я вижу огромный потенциал для сотрудничества между Швецией и Казахстаном в контексте предоставления решений в текущих проектах по модернизации этого сектора и желаю всем участникам интересного и продуктивного диалога. Спасибо.
Thank you so much, Mats. Then I would like to hand over to the Kazakhstan side to give some introduction word. And Laura, do we have Mansour Oshubayev from the ministry with us?
Good day, colleagues. Yes, we do have him, but he's in the attendees list. Maybe he should switch to the panelist list.
Yeah, please.
To be able.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So then I would like to give you, Mr. Mansour Oshubayev, the word. He's the director of the Department of State Policy, Waste Management of the Ministry of Ecology, Geology and Natural Resources of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Please, for some introduction words to the seminar.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые коллеги. Позвольте от имени Министерства экологии, геологии и природных ресурсов поприветствовать всех участников данного заседания. Сегодня обсуждается опыт Швеции и ЕС в области расширенной ответственности. Это очень актуальный вопрос на сегодняшний день для Казахстана. Сегодняшнее, получается, совещание представляет нам возможность обсудить стратегии Казахстана по вопросам охраны окружающей среды и насущных проблем в данной области, в частности, по зеленой энергетике, а также отходам. То есть хотелось бы отметить, что Казахстан, в свою очередь, в 2017 году ввел утилизационный сбор на упаковку. Это бумажная, картонная, металлическая, стеклянная, пластиковая и комбинированная упаковка. Также, как я сейчас отметил, предыдущий спикер, на электрическое и электронное оборудование также в Казахстане введен утилизационный сбор. Ставки на них появились только в текущем году. На самом деле, ввиду того, что в Казахстане сейчас проводится огромная работа в части пересмотра ставок, а также установления именно ставок на стимулирование для того, чтобы данная отрасль могла правильно работать и получить правильное стимулирование в виде, будем говорить, как в виде субсидий от денег утилизационного сбора. Хотелось бы послушать на сегодняшнем совещании ваши предложения. Госпожой Лаурой Малик было сообщено о том, что здесь можно обсудить огромный опыт именно европейских стран. Мне очень-очень интересно. Хотел бы, конечно, в ходе данного совещания также поучаствовать в вопросах, позадавать вопросы, записать их для себя, а также использовать данный опыт уже при обсуждении совместно с нашими ассоциациями, непосредственно с госпожой Малик, с ее поддержкой. Благодарю вас всех за то, что сегодня вы включили меня в данное совещание. Давайте-то начнем. Я буду максимально пытаться получить информацию, которую мы сегодня обсудим. Спасибо, госпожа Магнусон.
Thank you so much. So then we continue with the speakers, and then I would like to give the word to Mr. Weine Wikvist for your presentation.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, before we start presentation, sorry, Weine. Before we start presentation, I just want to give a short speech and also give some instructions to our attendees. Maybe, is it okay to stop the demonstrating your screen? Because we can see all the documents that was open on your desk, Weine.
Yeah, I stopped the screen now. But now I think something happened, so it was a little bit difficult.
We still can see your desk and what is written, what kind of documents. Okay, now it's okay. So
sorry
thank you,
about that,
Weine,
but...
thank you, Jessica. Yeah, thank you all for organizing this event in a short notice, because I know in Sweden, in order to have a cup of coffee even, you have to plan it 1 week ahead. Now, considering the scale of the event, it's quite quick. So it's, no, it's true. I've been living there for 2.5 years, right? So thank you, Mr. Mats Foyer. Спасибо вам большое за то, что вот за такой короткий срок это все организовали. В данное время у нас Министерство экологии обсуждается размеры утильсбора, обсуждается механизм расширенных обязательств производителей, поэтому данное мероприятие как раз-таки получается вовремя, и мы надеемся, что это будет очень полезно. И сегодня у нас участвует из организации, которая занимается сбором, переработкой, организации, которая занимается вывозом отходов. У вас вот снизу есть в настройках значок глобуса, вы там можете выбрать русский перевод. По программе у нас сперва сейчас будут выступать эксперты из Швеции, после этого у нас будет время на обсуждение. Спасибо. Надеюсь, будет очень продуктивно и полезно. Thanks, Weine. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. So then, Weine, let's make another try to share your screen.
Yeah. We should do. I will have to because my presentation went away a few minutes ago when I was told not to start talking, so it will come right now.
So then, while Weine is finding his presentation again, I also would like to say welcome to Henrik, who has joined us to this seminar.
I assume you see my presentation now?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Jessica, and Mats and Laura for the introduction. Basically, this seminar is about extended producer responsibility for packaging waste, but we also wanted to give a larger picture about the situation in general when it comes to municipal waste management, because absolutely packaging waste is a very important part of it, but it is not only the only part. So therefore, I think it would be interesting to see the overall picture and how everything fits together. I don't know how much you know about Sweden, but compared to the area, it's a small country compared to Kazakhstan. And we have about half of the number of inhabitants. And you can also see some other facts about our country when it comes to the number of municipalities and also the steering system. I'm representing the Swedish Association for Waste Management and Recycling, and our members are primarily municipal members, but we also have quite a large number of associated private member companies. And we have a vision that we should strive to the situation with zero waste. And of course, this will be very difficult, but this is a long-term goal to achieve. And of course, you can also discuss in general what is zero waste in practice, because we will all know that in practice, zero waste will be very difficult to achieve, but we can see that more as a guideline. I wanted to say something about similarities and differences because I think it's important to understand that, of course, if you look on the ground, when you look at the refuse trucks and the landfills and so on, it may see some similarities between Sweden and Kazakhstan. But I think there are many also differences. And I think the most important one is that Sweden is a member of the European Union, and therefore Sweden does not alone regulate what's happening within the field of waste management, but together with the other 26 members of the Union. Okay. So, when we talk about waste management, we all believe in this waste hierarchy, which is not only a kind of a situation to describe how we deal with waste management, but this is also the basis for all kind of legislation on European and Swedish side, which means that we should try to reduce, and then secondly, reuse, recycle, and energy recovery comes before landfill. And this is what gives the basis for all kind of the legislative proposals, which comes out from the EU Union and from in Sweden as well. So what I wanted to stress is that the European Union rules in many different ways. So we used to count that about 80% of all the relevant national legal acts in Sweden are based on EU directives or regulations.
В Швеции основаны на директивах или регламентах Евросоюза.
Planning, different kind of waste prevention plans and similar. And they are also setting the floor for recycling targets in Europe, for example, for packaging. And it also gives the opportunity to ship waste for recycling and energy recovery between the countries within the European Union. And also very important, it sets common permission standards for different kind of facilities like sorting, composting, waste energy and landfill facilities. And it also gives the common rules for EPR, for packaging, electronics and batteries. Then of course the national implementation can be a bit different, but they have to follow the same kind of rule. And this means that in Europe, we have recycling targets for municipal solid waste. 55% should be recycled by 2025 and 60% by 2030 and up to 65% by 2035. So in average in 2018, for example, or it was about 47% collected for recycling. And this is so important to understand that these recycling targets are the real recycling, which means that they are not directly related to what is collected, but they are related to what is real recycled in the next step of the recycling change. So from 2020, there are no more what I used to call fake recycling. These would be the actual figures, and it will become very difficult to reach them in many countries, I think. And at the same time, the landfill of municipal solid waste have been restricted to a maximum of 10% by 2030. And of course, the situation is very different in many European countries. This slide shows the situation by 2019, which was the old way of measuring recycling, the green bars you can see here. So I would assume the new statistics from 2021, which we haven't seen yet, will look quite different actually when it comes the size of the green bars, because unfortunately until now, recycling was measured quite differently in different countries. So it was very different to compare. But the red bars are easy to compare because these are the measures for landfill, which is the important thing, of course. And as you can see, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Finland, and some others are in the bottom with practically very small.
Can I just, is it possible for you to put the slide in presentation mode so we can see, because it's difficult for us with this detailed picture to see the countries?
Oh yeah, I thought I did that. I think I have to.
Оказывается, нет.
Yeah. No, we don't see your presentation. Only see what you are seeing.
То есть мы сейчас видим не на полном экране. Ну ладно, тогда мы можем и так продолжать, в принципе. Странно, не знаю, почему так происходит, но я надеюсь, что вы хотя бы что-то сможете увидеть.
Between the countries in Europe, and most important, you can see that there are many countries that will have to cope quite a lot in the situation when it comes to reduce the red bars, the landfilling, until 2030. The average generation of municipal waste in Sweden is about 460 kilograms per person, and which ends up with close to 5 million tons yearly. And in this graph show that we reduced the dependence of landfill over the past 30 years by a number of steps. And of course, there was not one single tool that did this situation. As you can see, it's a combination of landfill tax, producer responsibility, landfill ban, and so on. And we think that the reason that we could achieve this very good situation from Swedish point of view is that there were from the very beginning ambitious goal. We also have very clear responsibility. There was a financial stability when it comes to how to finance this new situation. And we implemented a lot of new technology. And also very important, there was a political commitment that was the same over this period of time. So it didn't change every time we changed the government. So we can have political stability beyond the new goals in order to decrease landfilling. And in order to achieve this, we also believe that you have to use a number of steering instruments, what I used to call the toolbox, which consists of legal, economical, and informative steering instruments. And there are always a combination of these steering instruments that will become important in order to come forward. As I said before, for example, we have now ban on landfill, we have taxes on waste to landfill, also on waste for energy. We also have a number of recycling targets for municipal waste, which are more or less similar to the European target, but sometimes they exceed the European targets as well. And in Sweden, we have a legal responsibility divided into the municipalities, which are responsible for household and other municipal waste together with waste paper. And then the producers are responsible for packaging waste, electronic batteries, and so on, according to the European law. And the waste generators, they are responsible for all other kind of wastes, like building and excavation waste and all kind of industrial waste, of course. And of course, the municipalities have a very important role to play in this system, even when it comes to the producer responsibilities, because they are very next to situation to the citizens, and they also have a political responsibility, and they are also responsible for planning, because many times you need spaces for plants and for collection centers and so on. And absolutely, they are also partners to the producers' organizations. So we think that municipalities are in the core of this situation. And as a result of this recycling targets and landfill reduction targets, of course, we can generate a lot of resources from waste, which you can see on this slide, like resources in materials, like biogas, waste to energy for heating and electricity, and so forth. And now, this is my second last slide. Of course, we all believe that we are now in the linear economy, and we want to strive to what we think is the circular economy. I would say that in practice, we are now somewhere between the linear economy and the recycling economy. And it's a long distance road to find the way to the final circular economy, but that can be the final destination, of course, for everyone. And in the meantime, for example, in Sweden, there have been introduced a number of additional steering instruments, like we now have a plastic bag tax. We have a ban on single-use items according to the European directive. There will be additional taxes for single-use items. There are tax incentives for repair and so on. There are discussion about the extension of the deposit system. Perhaps we will hear more about that in a few minutes. And there are additional support for biogas, biofertilizer prevention. And just recently, the Swedish government launched a new national strategy for circular economy. So I stop there, and I hope this will give you a short introduction to what was the main purpose of this seminar, to look more deeply into the EPR system in Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veine. And I will also like to say to everyone that the embassy will share the slides with you. If you had a problem to see the slides in this presentation, you will receive.
Вы получите сами
Now we continue in our agenda, and you will have the possibility to ask questions later on. So please keep them in mind, and maybe write them in the chat if you don't want us to forget the questions that you have. Then I would like to introduce Henrik Nilsson, who is the CEO of the producer umbrella organization in Sweden. And Henrik will talk a bit about the EPR packaging collection and recycling, and out of how we have chosen to implement it in Sweden. Please, Henrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And hopefully you can see my correct slide sharing right now. Yes, now it looks like it should do, actually. Thank you, Henrik. So thank you very much for this ability for this option to share some insights from Sweden regarding the extended producer responsibility. I will be talking about the EPR regarding packaging with some limitations, but focusing on packaging. I'm the CEO of Svenskt Producentansvar, the Swedish responsibility organization, which mainly focuses on regulatory and public affairs issues regarding the EPR scheme in Sweden. So just short on EPR in Sweden overall. It was introduced when it pertains to packaging in 1994. And getting back to what Weine Wikqvist said earlier, it's very much based upon what is the common European law, of course, directed by various EU directives. The part of EPR, packaging EPR that I'm focusing on is the most common packaging materials. We have paper, plastic, metal, and glass packaging, and the focus is on household packaging, which is the large system for collection is focused on household packaging. And by the way, this signage and symbols is a Nordic cooperation between municipalities and producers and waste management industry that has finally, throughout many years of discussion, finally been able to agree upon a collective system for symbols. I will not be talking about the deposit scheme for all allocans, and you will hear about that from Bengt Lagerman in a few minutes, which is operated by Returpack. So that is collected separately in a DRS system. We make this distinction between household and commercial or trade and industry packaging. The reason for that is that commercial packaging to a very large extent is collected by itself, so to say, due to the value of the packaging waste as a raw material, which covers the collection costs. And I'm talking mainly about OCC, old corrugated cardboard, and plastic packaging as shrink wrap, and metal packaging is of course collected as scrap to a large extent from trade and industry. So the main collection system that has to be arranged by the producers is the collection from the households, where the volumes are smaller, the quality of material is lower. So just to complicate things, this is an org chart for how the EPR system is set up in Sweden and the ownership of the EPR system for packaging. It's based upon a thinking of a collective fulfillment of the producer responsibility. The producer individually is responsible for their packaging, but it needs to be a collective fulfillment. We can't have one collection system per producer. We need to cooperate on the collection and the recycling of this. So on top here, you have the two different ownership structures or ownership groups. We have a number of representatives of the producers, or actually the companies paying the packaging fee and financing the system, to the left. And to the right, you have representatives of material and packaging industry. And these in various degrees own this next level, which is the material companies, which is not anything stranger than it's 4 companies with a material name in each, which focus on fulfilling the producer responsibility for each packaging material, so paper, plastic, metal, and glass. And the representatives of the producers represent the main are represented by trade organizations mainly. Trade organizations for the retailers and for grocery stores mainly is a large extent to it, and also breweries, etc. The representatives of material and packaging industry is, in the case of paper, there are larger, well-known pulp and paper industry names owning that company. The plastic is owned by representatives of the plastic industry, and glass is owned and represented by Ardagh Glass, which is a very large player in the glass packaging industry. And the glass, of course, are mainly interested in collecting glass material and thereby owner in the glass company, plastic and plastic, etc. Whereas the representatives of producers are shareholders in all of these 4 companies. These companies then together own Svenska Förpackningsinsamlingen, FDI, which is a company then that has two tasks: to operate the collection system, and I will get back to details on what the collection system.
Организация, которая задача которой состоит в финансировании и эксплуатации системы сбора. Я вам об этом более детально расскажу, потому что, в принципе, очень много затрат сопряжено со сбором упаковки. Ну и
a sister company to FDI, which mainly operates in public and regulatory affairs. The collected material that is collected by FDI is then handed on to each of these 4 material companies, depending on the material, of course. So collected glass packaging is delivered to the glass company for further recycling, etc. And on the bottom of the page here, you have some sort of value chain. You have producers putting packaging on the market. It's consumed by household and commercial and industry. And as I said, for commercial and industry, a large extent of the packaging volume is collected, driven by the material value. What is not collected from trade and industry, etc., is usually ending up in the waste for incineration. Whereas for the household collection, FDI operates a collection system and forwards the collected material to the owner companies. So the current packaging EPR in Sweden, the producers, which are the producers and what are their responsibility? Well, the responsibility basically contains 2.5 things. The one thing is to provide this appropriate collection system. And as I said, this is only provided for the household collection. For trade and industry, it's operated by the material value. The collection system is based upon a system of 5,000 bring stations. I'll get back to that in a minute. And the second clear requirement is the design requirement, where the producer needs to ensure that they minimize the amount of packaging put on market. So no over packaging is allowed. However, it is very hard to define what is over packaging. There are in the ordinance, packaging ordinance, there are some references to some European standards on packaging design. However, to my knowledge, there has never been any oversight into that issue. But we argue that there is no over packaging because there is a cost of packaging material. There's no financial incentives to overpack. And also you pay the fee as a producer based upon the weight of the packaging material you put on the market, which basically means that for financial reasons, there will be no over packaging. Of course, there are some businesses that are exempt of this, of course, cosmetics being one, perhaps. That is an example where you have a lot of packaging for a small volume of products. There's also a requirement to ensure that the packaging that you put on the market is recyclable. Also here we have a way to walk to ensure that this is fully fulfilled. And I said 2.5 responsibilities for the producers. The half one is to reach the recycling targets. There is actually no requirements for the producers to reach any recycling targets. It's defined as a societal goal of some sort. However, if the recycling targets are not reached, one can assume that the government will intervene and increase legislation in one way or the other. So who is the producer that has to fulfill these responsibilities? Well, the definition of producer basically follows from the EU directives, but it's free for every member state to make any further definitions. And in Sweden, it's basically two steps of the value chain: the manufacture of the packaging, if the packaging is manufactured in Sweden, and the filler of the packaging, if the filling of the packaging is done in Sweden. Otherwise, it is the importer of the filled packaging that is defined as the producer. The cost and financing of the system, the collection, as I said, is the main cost of this system. For the households, it's based upon 5,000 bring stations. so 5,000 bin stations to a population of 10 million. In addition to that, there's a voluntary door-to-door collection system, both for multifamily housing, but also for single-family houses. For multifamily housing, it's basically a free market where waste management companies offer extra services to the landlords and the one owning the multifamily housing. When it comes to single-family housing, it's usually municipalities and municipalities' initiative establishing door-to-door collection. Today covers about 50% of the households, which then on their rent or of their waste fee pay for this extra service. And as I said, the collection from trade and industry is driven by the value of the material, old corrugated cardboard, shrink wrap, and metal scrap. The cost of the collection system, the 5,000 bring stations, and some subsidies that are paid for to the door-to-door collection, and also the cost of recycling, which of course differs quite significantly between different materials. Paper, collected paper waste and metal is usually sold as a raw material directly without any further treatment. But for example, plastic has to be sorted and washed, etc., granulated and so on, which is of course a significant cost. But the main cost of the system is the collection from the households. It's financed by packaging fees to cover this deficit. So we're operating, all these companies that I showed in the previous picture is operated as a not-for-profit in a not-for-profit structure. So there are no profits, dividends to owners in any way. And that is, of course, that it's owned by the ones paying the fees. So it wouldn't make any sense to take any dividends from it. Usually, it's the fees are paid by the fillers or importers. So usually the manufacturers of packaging are defined as producers, but they are not part of the financing structure. The cost, as I said, is the cost of collection and cost of sorting and recycling, and you have some income from the value of the recycled materials, and in some cases it covers a bit of the sorting cost, and in some cases it's a cost to basically incinerate the material. We also operate on a strict basis that there should be no cross subsidies between packaging material. So metal packaging should cover the cost and carry the costs of collection of metal packaging and not subsidize or get any subsidies from plastic packaging, for example. We also have some sort of basic eco-modulation. Eco-modulation is very much a hot topic within EU for future EPR regulation. We have stayed a little bit ahead of that discussion by implementing a eco-modulation, and it's also based upon requests from producers to be able to decide between various packaging materials and especially various types of plastic packaging materials to have some sort of end-of-life cost included in the packaging fee. So we operate that for paper and plastic packaging. You have a high fee or low fee, where you get the lower fee if the packaging that you put on the market is deemed to be recyclable to a large extent and also has a value as a raw material after recycling. That will then increase the share of the cost that can be covered by the value of the material. And you get a higher fee, of course, if you do not fulfill those criteria. Upcoming changes, as we heard before, a lot of our legislation is driven by the EU regulation. In 2018, there was an amendment to the Waste Framework Directive called the minimum criteria for producer responsibility, Article 8A. which, among other things, states that the producers should cover the full cost of collection of packaging waste. That means, as I said, today, the households that request the increased service of having door-to-door collection pay for that themselves. That will no longer be the case in the future. The producers should cover the full cost of the collection. And it's basically very detailed in the EU regulation what needs to be covered by the producers by no later than 2023. Also, we have an increased recycling targets where we're moving to actually measuring recycling rather than measuring amount collected for recycling. There's a new, what's called a calculation point that defines where this should be measured. So what is actually, what has actually been put into a recycling process. The EU has also not only defined where to measure the recycling, they have also increased the targets, and Sweden has moved ahead a few years ahead of those targets and already implemented the EU 2025 targets. So the Swedish targets are above the EU targets. And there is also a requirement for an increased transparency where we need to separate between recycling rates for households and trade and industry recycling rates. So if we look at the chart to the right here, just focusing on plastic and paper, which are the main challenges here. The national result for 2020, actual recycling of plastic packaging, is somewhere around 34%, whereas the EU target is, the 21 target is 25%. And we have a national target of 50%. So we're below the national target on plastic. And even worse, if we separate out only the household recycling rate, we end up around somewhere around 15% as an estimate. And this is, of course, due to that the household tend to not sort their plastic packaging, whereas the plastic packaging from trade and industry to a large extent is collected as it has a high material value. The trend is the same if we look at paper packaging, even we're at a higher level, but the trend is the same. We have a national result of recycling for paper packaging of 78%, which exceeds the 60% that is the EU target, but is below the Swedish target of 85%. And also here, if we break up the 78% overall national result into household and trade and industry, we can see that the household is lower than the average for the same reasons, as I said, with plastic packaging, where the OCC material value carries a lot of the trade and industry collection, which are also very large volumes, of course. The table below shows that for glass packaging, we're superseding the EU targets and also the Swedish targets, reaching 94%. So we're somewhere approaching 100% recycling rate for glass packaging. Also for steel and aluminum, we're above both national and EU targets. But this, given the first bullet point here, that the producers have to cover the full cost of the collection, and we need for one reason or another reach these recycling targets. We need to define what we find as a reasonable service level for the collection system and what is needed to reach the recycling targets. And we can conclude from all the knowledge we have and also the knowledge from the municipalities implementing door-to-door collection that it increases, at least for paper and plastic, we have increases of in the neighborhood of 50 to 100% increase in the collection rate when the households can collect, sort door to door. So we end up with, that is something that we need to do to be able to reach the targets, and we can conclude that even if we double the household collection on plastic, we will still not reach the targets. So those are the challenges ahead. this has also been, this has also been discussed a lot in some upcoming legislation that has been proposed by the government as of late, where there is a discussion also not only on in which way the producers should cover the full collection costs, but also if it should be operated by the municipalities at the expense of the producers. That was all that I had, and please feel to follow up with some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henrik. And we will save the questions for later after also the last presentation. So I hope that you have the possibility to stay in the seminar, Henrik.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah, perfect. So then we continue with Bengt Lagerman, who is the CEO of Returpack, and he will give us more information about the deposit refund system for PET and aluminium cans. And I also would like to say to the audience, if you have questions on electronic waste that also was discussed before in the introduction from the Kazakhstan side, please don't hesitate to ask those questions.
Вводной части и при выступлении коллег из Казахстана, пожалуйста, без каких-либо колебаний можете задавать ваши вопросы.
This opportunity to be able to talk about the Swedish system. I hope that you can see my screen and my presentation now. Yeah, that's good. So I'm going to talk to you about the Swedish DRS, the return deposit scheme. If we go back, actually, we started way back in 1984. This was before EPR systems. This was actually going back to the first legislation coming in 82, and we started up our...
Линия первого законодательства в 1982 году. Мы начали наши операции в 1984 году.
The industry, it was the producers of cans plus the brewery industry together with the trade that wanted this introduction. There was concerns about littering of this one-way packaging, so the legislators wanted to put in some laws around it, but also the industry was very keen on getting a system that could recover the empty cans, because of course what's good about aluminum is that once it's been produced as aluminum, it's very easy to recycle. So the industry was very interested in getting the cans back for new, so it could be remade into new cans. And so a law was passed, as I said, in 82 and in 84, because it takes about 2 years to start up a system, a deposit return system. So we started in 84, and we were actually, for single-use cans and later on PET bottles, we were the first in the world actually doing this. Of course, there's been a good number of years with the deposits in Sweden. Actually, the Swedish brewery started in 1885, so that was about 100 years earlier. They had a common glass bottle in Stockholm where there was a small deposit on it, and of course that was a reusable glass bottle that was being washed and then returned. So Swedish population, they had a quite good understanding how a deposit system works. They were used to it from the glass system, and now we introduced it on cans. 10 years later, we had the same discussion regarding PET. PET bottles were introduced one way and also refillable PET. And the legislators were afraid about littering again, whereas the industry was interested in seeing how can we develop PET into a circular system. New legislation was passed in 91, and we actually started in 94. Originally, all of the collection and so on went through with the breweries and soft drink producers. So all the collection went that way, and they also sorted the the material when it was coming in. However, this was not a rational way of treating it, so we actually built a site in Norrköping, 150 kilometers south of Stockholm, to where all of the packaging collected is getting, and we collect it, we transport it, and it gets to our site for further sorting and processing. Our owners today, originally also the packaging industry was part of it, but today our owners are the trade and the breweries. So it's 50% owned by Swedish Brewery Association, and then 25% each of Swedish Food Retailers Association and Swedish Grocery Stores Association. And they are also sitting on the Returpack board with 8 members split according to these percentages. We have also supervisory authority, which is the Swedish Board of Agriculture, which is the government board for us, which differs it from the EPR system, where it's the Board of Environment, I believe. But it's for historical reasons, it's the Swedish Board of Agriculture. We see our mission as to be responsible for a Swedish deposit system of cans and PET bottles for ready-to-drink beverages. So we are talking, and this is legislation, it only talks about ready-to-drink beverages, and it's also in metal and plastic containers. So what we do, we spread the information, we handle compensation for the return of the bottles, and we coordinate the collection. If you look into our legislation, the current version, well, the legislation is much longer than this, but this is, I mean, for us, the important part. It says that ready-to-drink beverages in plastic bottles or metal cans may be professionally transferred or marketed only if the plastic bottle or return is part of such a system, which means that we have a return system. And what's important in Swedish legislation is that it's both production and selling, which means that a store are not allowed to transfer or sell a product in plastic bottles or metal cans unless it's part of a deposit return systems. So that's a very important part of it. If we look at our numbers, and this is quite fresh, as you see, we update for 2021. Bear with me, our official accounts are not really closed yet, but this is where we think that we stand. We have one facility, as I said, in Norrköping, is about 75 employees. We cover 9,567 individual articles. So that is different types of brands for beer, soft drinks, and so on. So it's all individual parts in our system. Each article is registered separately, and that's because it's a deposit system. So we need to keep tab of every single article. We have about 12,000 places where we collect our cans and bottles. The bulk of it is in a little bit more than 3,000 grocery stores, but we also have other places, which could be skiing resorts, very typically now when we have the winter vacations in school vacations in Sweden. So it's skiing resorts in summer. It can be out in the archipelago. It can be camping resorts or wherever where people are, we collect. Overall, last year we collected 2.4 billion cans and bottles and had a turnover of 3.4 billion Swedish crowns. We reached an 88.2% average recycling rate, and the target is 90% in Sweden for both cans and bottles. Sweden is higher than the current EU level, even though it will be increased in the mid-20s to 90%. The reason why we as also being the oldest and most established deposit return system, is not able to, for the moment, reach 80 or 90%, can spell out as Norway, because there is a tremendous large border trade between Sweden and Norway, and about 15% in a normal year, and this is pre-coronaviruses, in a normal year, about 15% of what is sold in Sweden is bought by Norwegians, brought back to Norway, consumed in Norway, and about 1/3 of that is then coming back on their next trip to Sweden, where it goes back into our system. The remainder 2/3 is either collected in the Norwegian infinitum deposit return system, or it is actually, unfortunately, then collected as household waste or in the metal and plastic collection in Norway. And we aim to increase these rates. Now, of course, during 2020 and 2021, border trade was about 1/3 because of restrictions, but this still means that we have about a 3, 4, 5% in our numbers is actually due to the border trade. And also, as a matter of fact, we run 2.2 million miles a year with our trucks collecting bottles and cans. We have calculated what this means to the environment, and say the deposit return system saves about 180,000 tons of CO2 equivalents per year. Compared to if these bottle cans were made from virgin material. So that is actually corresponding to the overall to what is coming out from a small Swedish city like Svedala or Kiruna. So it's quite a significant contribution that we do to CO2 reduction. Sustainability is what it's all about. And it guides us in our business in all the way that we are operating. So for us, sustainability is not only collecting, but it's in the way that we operate as a business and taking care of our people and the environment and society. We have a goal to be fossil-free by 2025. We are now at 99% fossil-free in our collection, and we want to be carbon neutral by 2030. And of course, we focus in 5 areas of sustainability. Recycling is, of course, that's our prime target. But then also, I mean, in the way we do our business, climate and environment, business relationships, co-workers, and society. And we also produce a sustainability report. This is the one from 2020, and we will have one in 2021, and then the 2021 will also be translated into English. But it's currently it's we are working on the final numbers there. We spend a lot of effort on marketing and communication. And this is to remind everyone that there is a need for recycling the bottles and cans. And this is important because we always need to remind people of that. So we do TV commercials, we are a lot in media and also outdoor and on the internet. We want to do it in a very, very positive way. We don't want to say anyone is bad for not doing what they should be doing, but we are promoting that everyone will be returning their bottles and cans. And of course, what's important is attitudes and behaviors. That's what we try and influence, but we also should make it easy and accessible to actually deposit the bottles and cans. I put in a slide here how it works with the money when it comes to the deposit. So in our system, it's quite simple. When brewers, importers sell beverages to a store, they charge a deposit to the store, and they take that money, or actually we bill them that money, so they transfer it to Returpack. The store pays the deposit money, and then the consumer pays it back to the store, and that way the store is break even for deposit. And when the consumer returns the bottle and can, it doesn't have to go back to the same store. It can be any of these places where there is a return vending machine. They receive the money back, and then we compensate the store that has paid out the deposit money from the money that we collected from the first instance, and that way the deposit money flows around. Otherwise, if you look at our financials, we have the revenues. Our revenues are sales of collected sorted material, and we also charge an admin fee on plastic. We don't need to charge an admin fee on aluminum, because aluminum prices are so high that it actually finances the whole system, whereas plastic prices are lower, and that's why we need to charge an admin fee. And then, of course, on the expenditure side, we pay the grocery trade handling fees, for instance, for that they have return vending machines in the store. Also, other collection points, we pay handling fees. We have our logistics and production, where we sort and bale the material, and we have, of course, our operational expenses. If we look at our production, we have at our facility, what we do is we sort the cans and bottles and compress them into bales. And then we sell this to the aluminum to Germany and France, where it can be made into new can sheet metal. And for us, it's important because this is part of the circular loop, that it actually becomes new can sheet metal again. And on the PET, we sell to a customer that is actually renting on our premises, and they are making new PET flakes, which can be then used for making new bottles. Last year, I think this is 2021 numbers. We sold 22,000 tons of aluminum, and about a little bit more than that in PET, and also some HDPE. This is also plastic, but it's mainly caps, but also some of the bottles are in HDPE. Yeah. So, I mean, what we do, we sell the collected sorted material, and from us, it's important that the biorecycled material so is used as an input of the production of new bottles and cans. In a summary, to talk about what key factors for a successful relationship and for a successful deposit return system is that we need to have a good understanding of customer and consumer business and business needs. We need to be relevant and have good knowledge and expertise in the relevant areas. We need to understand what's really happening with consumers, and so on. We adapt when something new is happening. So, for instance, with trade and e-commerce, we are now also collecting that way. And we have good long-standing relationships. I mean, we've been operating for 40 years now on several levels, and we need to have a pricing that is, of course, competitive and relevant. So that was my presentation. I will stop sharing right now.
Thank you very much, Bengt, for this presentation. So then I would like to open up for questions to all our speakers, and please don't hesitate.
Пожалуйста, вопросы можете задавать.
Translation, so you can ask the questions in Russian, and the speakers can answer in English. So please be free. Maybe you would like to start, Laura, if you have any questions to the speakers.
Thank you. Yes. It is interesting to know what about the legislation. So is there any law on the national level saying that these packaging waste should be reused again? The first question. And the second one is related to the and the second question is
второй вопрос.
And the second question is related to the collection of the waste from the households. If someone could tell more in details. So in Kazakhstan, why we're asking these questions, in Kazakhstan currently we have one EPR operator who is responsible for all this waste collection and recycling system. In 2019, when this new ecological code was being developed, there was a attempt to let's say to include this deposit refund system, but unfortunately it was excluded from the ecological code. And now currently we have this EPR operator EPR system in Kazakhstan that is that covers packaging waste, electronics, and components, car components. So for now, we do not have this kind of system like in Sweden, where producer takes the responsibility, establish this kind of associations. Legally, we do have that kind of right given to the producers. They can organize this system, but they should have their own facility in order to recycle all this. And they are not interested in this kind of system for now. So in these perspectives, what kind of recommendation could you give? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So maybe I start to give the word to Henrik, and maybe also once again, Henrik, to explain the relationship between the EU and Sweden and the implementation of the EU directives in our legislation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Just to start with EU legislation, we basically have 2 or maybe 3 directives.
Yes. 2 у нас или 3 есть директивы.
We have the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, and we also have, as of late, as of 2019, I think it was, we have the Single-Use Plastic Directive. The Single-Use Plastic Directive is very focused on avoiding, of course, single-use plastic, but also reuse of packaging, etc. And that is starting to be implemented in the Swedish legislation. It has not been that so far, we haven't seen it. There are reusable packaging, but that is mainly for very specific applications and usually within the trade and industry. For example, wooden pallets. There are some in the chemical industry, some specific applications.
В химическом секторе, например.
Cables for construction, etc., that are used in a reusable packaging, but those are basically closed loops that have been implemented within these industries. There are no requirements for reusable packaging for consumer as of now. However, as I said, there is an ongoing discussion about eco-modulation, and within that discussion about eco-modulation, probably we will end up with some sort of incentives to reuse packaging. How that will work is one of the key issues to solve with that. Of course, we have product safety is one issue. One issue is that it can only be when it's commercially used, commercially refilled. It will be impossible to measure reuse when the households reuse a plastic box that has bought ice cream in. How many times have you reused it? It will be possible to follow up. And what happens when that packaging reaches its end of life? Well, it will be deposited probably into the regular household waste or packaging waste collection system. So probably we will see it in the future. We haven't seen it yet, and there are a lot of, I think, issues that have to be solved before you can implement it in a household packaging environment. Secondly, where we're seeing how the EPR is operated in Sweden now. If we talk about packaging and packaging, one-way packaging, paper, plastic, metal, and glass. It is today the legislation stipulates that it's only the producer or someone that has the producers that has an agreement with the producers that can collect separately packaging waste, and that is then delivered to these, as I said, material companies that owns or operates themselves or have acquired or sourced the recycling capacity from the waste management industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik. Bengt, please.
Yes, and of course, everything that Henrik was saying is also, of course, valid for the deposit return system and the laws, legislation that is currently going on both in EU.
Правовые акты, принимаемые в
impacting our system, and then we have our separate deposit law as well. If we look at recycling rate or actually how much material goes back into new packaging, then everything that is collected in a DRS system is actually recycled. Then when it comes to, as I said, aluminum, it actually goes back into new cans, whereas when it comes to PET, there is not that direct link, but about 40 to 50% of the material in the Swedish bottles are recycled material. So it's a very, very high portion there. But it's only the clear material when PET is clear that you actually can recycle it into new bottles. Whereas if it's colored or if it got barriers for various reasons, then it's hard to get a stable material. I think the EU legislation and also Swedish proposed legislation will add that it will be an average, should be an average of 25% first and then 30% of recycling material in the bottles, and we are well above that already. So that's not really making that much of a difference. Also, I could add that also with the new legislation, originally, and as I said, the current legislation says it's ready to drink beverages. There are exceptions, which I didn't mention. That is for fruit juices, fruit berry juices, and for milk-based products. Now the legislation will change in 23, so it will so fruit juices will need to be part of our system. Also, legislation changed so that diluted products, that means if you mix a concentrate with water at home, what we call saft in Sweden, is also going to be part of the system. Now, it doesn't make that much difference for us. We already started to introduce that in 2015, opened up for producers for diluted products, in 2018 for juices. So most of the suppliers, producers are already part of our system, but it's just that legislators are coming after with also such a legislation. In 29, milk-based products also need to be part of our system if it's in plastic containers, and we are looking now in how we can adapt that. We have opened up our system for milk-based products on cans, but not yet for plastic containers, because there is concern about the smell in the stores that may come from the collection of milk-based products.
Thank you very much, Bengt. And for all the participants, you are welcome to ask questions. You can use the raise hand function or write the questions in the Q&A or the chat.
В чате.
Jessica, yeah, and speakers, thank you to your answers. Currently, maybe you've heard or not, in Kazakhstan, we are facing some kind of political changes. And recently, EPR operator functions were transferred from the private company to the national governmental company. And now we have ongoing discussions regarding the limits, regarding the utilization fee. So we have utilization fee set in the framework of this EPR system. And for the packaging waste, it was quite low, that it doesn't cover even the expenses for collection and transportation. It only covers expenses for recycling of this packaging waste. So now the Ministry of Ecology is reviewing different experience of different countries, how they calculated this utilization fee, what kind of criteria they used, what kind of methodology. So when it comes to this, maybe you could tell about the experience of Sweden, how and using which kind of criteria the utilization fee was calculated. Thank you.
Thank you. Henrik.
Yes, thank you. Well, the utilization fee, or we call it packaging fee, basically what the producers pay to put a ketchup bottle on the market. It's basically, it's a very simple calculation. It's the cost of the system divided by the amount of packaging put on the market. However, it's divided by these different materials, as I said, because we have this material autonomy, so there should be no cross subsidies between plastic and between metal, etc. So you have to keep track of the collection, and the costs that are included are the cost of collection through this appropriate system. And there has been a 25-year-long discussion about what is appropriate, but the appropriate system is now, as of today, defined as the 5,000 bring stations. So operating 5,000 bring stations, those are operated by FTI, but outsourced, so everything is done by waste management companies. Operating 5,000 bring stations, and the collected material is then you have a cost for the recycling of the material, and you have at the end of the line, in some cases, an income from the value of the material. So cost of collection plus cost of recycling minus income of material value will be your total cost that has to be divided upon the producers, and it's divided basically upon the amount of packaging put on the market. To avoid any major injustices in that calculation, you divide it first by material, as I said. So plastic is collected separately from paper, so it's quite easy to separate the collection cost of that. But you also have to separate, as I said, we do not operate a collection system for trade and industry packaging waste, as that is collected by material value. So you also have a second dimension, which is collection stream. So only packaging that is sold to household is covering costs for the household collection system.
Thank you, Henrik. Very comprehensive answer. Bengt?
Just additional question. So Henrik mentioned that while calculating it, only expenses for collection and recycling is covered, right? Minus this revenue from selling these materials. So in Kazakhstan, for example, we have a huge country. So it holds like 9th place due to its territory. And we have very few recycling companies located mainly in the southern parts of Kazakhstan. So we have a long distance for transportation. So from collecting point to the recycling facility. So in Kazakhstan, we have also these expenses for transportation. So this should be also covered, right? But in Sweden, the territory is not that huge like in Kazakhstan.
Well, we like to think it's huge, at least. However, not in the neighborhood of Kazakhstan, but also we have a few densely populated. The south of Sweden is densely populated. North of, I think the northern half of Sweden holds less than 1 million inhabitants. So it's very sparsely populated, and those are living along the coast. So we have very large areas of Sweden where there is very low population density. Still, we operate bring stations in those areas. You can always discuss how many bring stations you should have there, but we have bring stations in basically all populated places have a bring station in one way or the other. And the cost of that collection is covered by the producers. And the reason, but that doesn't affect the fee, or you can't separate the fee, because the producer can never say that I only sell my ketchup in the south of Sweden. My ketchup bottles will never end up in the north of Sweden. So therefore, the packaging fee is, the cost is divided upon all ketchup bottles put on the market. No distinction between where they will be sold. And the collection cost is not that significantly. I mean, it's a factor of maybe 5 in cost per ton of collection between the very most costly places to collect packaging material and the more densely and low cost areas to collect packaging material. Basically, because with that, the bring station system is rather efficient in collecting packaging material. So you're not looking at too bad of a difference between the collection costs.
So Bengt,
Yep.
you would like to add something to
Yes, of course, from that perspective, the deposit return system is a little bit more simple than what Henrik is describing, because we only got bottles and cans for beverages. However, we divide it the very same. Our costs include everything for running the system, including all the systems, everything connected to receiving and paying out the deposits, because I mean that's also a very primary function of our system. But then again, it's also the collection, and we collect a little bit more than 90% of our bottles come from the grocery stores. So that's why consumers bring them back to a return vending machine, and then they get their deposit out that way, and we collect primarily directly ourselves from these stores, and bring it here, and then we do our thing here in Norrköping. There is an established market for aluminum, so it means that there are bales, a bale market for aluminum, and we sell, as I said, to Germany and France. We don't have that capacity in Sweden. When it comes to PET, we actually were among the first actually to set up our own recycling facility together with an external partner here in Norrköping, because we saw that we needed a recycling facility to be able to operate this efficiently and get the circular loop. So we had to set that up ourselves. And as I said, For us, we only need to carry a fee on PET because that the revenues do not, and the sales of the material does not cover the cost for collection, whereas on aluminum they cover it. And as Henrik was explaining, we keep these separately so that we are not cross-subsidizing one material over another material. But I think also it's important for this actually to work is that there is a overall legislation that actually covers it so that the producers will take their responsibility. They will never set up a system if they're not forced to.
Thank you, Bengt. And also to look at the business model to make it a self-financed system. So Veine.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify up on the question from Laura a little bit that, of course, transportation costs are included, not only the collection cost, but the transportation to wherever you should recycle the material being collected, of course. And I think the most crucial point or the message for this seminar that the Swedish system is based on the producer responsibility, meaning that the producers having the full right to decide about the cost, how much they want to take from the fillers and others who have to pay the system. So it is nothing to do with the government. The government gives the frame for the system, and within this frame, the producers organize themselves how to deal with the cost. And that is according to the EU directive on the full cost coverage principle. So, and I assume that is more or less the same in all the EU countries. There can be some minor differences, but the principles are basically the same. And that means that you are coming up with a non-for-profit system. So in addition to that, I think that a very important part also to mention is the part of enforcement, because there will be a need to have some regulatory enforcement in order to push producers to be part of this producer responsibility scheme, as Henrik outlined already before, because there might be some producers who are not so willing to be part of that, and they have to be enforced via the regulatory authorities. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe
Хорошо, спасибо. И еще один вопрос.
System, it's easy to measure the amounts and it's easy to calculate the price. But how did we start? What did we do when we didn't have the system and when we should set the price for the first time? Henrik.
Well, that was in the mid-90s, so I wasn't around to explain what happened exactly then. But for what I heard, basically you had to make some assumptions. So a number of producers or representatives or producers got around the same table, made a few assumptions, concluded that this is our problem. We need to solve this problem. If we do not solve this problem, the government will intervene with even stricter regulation. So let's fix a solution for this. And some of the collection was already in place. As Bengt said, the deposit scheme was in place. A lot of municipalities had been collecting glass as in a separate collection stream, basically for logistics reasons, that you didn't want a lot of glass in your waste to incineration, both for transport cost, but also for incineration. It's not good to have too much glass in your incineration. And we have had in waste incineration for a very long time in Sweden, to a very large extent at least. So basically you had to make this, a lot of industry representatives got around the table, this made a few assumptions of what should this cost, implemented a fee for the packaging put on market. I know for a fact that they quite overshot the cost. So it ended up with having a big bank account for a few years. And sold this with various to avoid paying tax for all of that. That is something that is still chasing us for every annual report, how to handle that. So basically, to be on the safe side, they made a few assumptions about the cost of the system, which a lot of the costs are of course variable due to being driven by the volume of collection. If you have a low collection, you have a low cost. They made those assumptions. They put in a fee, and they, for in one way or the other, I don't know how it was done, but to get the acceptance from a large number of producers to participate in the system. Because I think that is one of the fundaments of this system, that in order to have it to be seen as a fair system, there has to be all competitors have to be involved in the system. We can't have two competitors on the market selling consumer products where one producer is part of this system and the other producer is not part of this system. That would undermine the system in a very short time. So I think that, and of course, what Vena said, that there has to be an enforcement to ensure that that is the case, because the producer responsibility, the EPR system that doesn't have any tools to enforce that producers take part of the system. You can only try to persuade. I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik. We are also just a few minutes left of the seminar. So Bengt and Vena, would you like to add something?
I can add just briefly. Of course, we started up a bit earlier. However, we have because setting up a DRS system, deposit return system, takes up to 2 years because it's so much more complicated than just collecting material, but it's also setting up systems for keeping track of each individual bottle and can and the deposits connected to it. It takes up to 2 years to set up such a system. That also meant that there was more calculations needed to be done and could be done so we can calculate the fees. Originally, we also had fees on aluminum, whereas we do not have that today because we have better aluminum prices. Also, but in the start, actually the system was running at big losses, which also meant that the owners, which was the brewery industry, and the rest of the industry, actually had to put in more share capital to refinance Returpack. So originally in the 80s, that was also a way to keep the system going.
Thank you so much. Let's see. We have a question also in the chat. Maybe that should be the last question. Could someone help me who is more fluent in Russia?
Yeah, I can help you.
Yeah.
So the attendee Murat is asking how plastic is recycled in Sweden. What products are made of plastic in Sweden?
So maybe Henrik, you can answer that.
Yes, and I can try to answer it. The plastic packaging waste that is collected from the household, all of that collection, which is about 100,000 tons of plastic packaging waste, is delivered to a recently established sorting plant, which sorts it into
сортировочный завод, который сортирует различные типы пластика, полипропилен, другие виды. Если это прозрачный материал, если это цветной материал. И на следующем этапе это продается как сырье для мытья и гранулировки. Это на европейском рынке осуществляется. Конечно же, мы отслеживаем, что материал соответствующим образом обрабатывается, но мы не можем полностью весь путь мониторить. После мытья и гранулировки уже непосредственно следующий процесс переработки на палеты. Мы не можем уже на следующем этапе мониторить, для чего используется этот пластик. Мы дополнительные шаги предпринимаем для обеспечения того, что пластик действительно перерабатывается в циркулярном формате, насколько это возможно. Имеется в виду, что это его не перемешивают в новые продукты, что это не следующий этап переработки материалов.
Tripping in the waste hierarchy staircase is that when you recycle plastic, you have the option of just agglomerating all various plastics types into something, a product, which is in the next step not material recyclable. And that is, I think, it is something that happens to a large extent in various EPR systems in Europe as of today. I think we will see some revisions on the packaging and packaging waste directive during 2022 that will hopefully in a few years limit that risk.
Thank you. Bengt, is there?
Yeah, we have it a little bit more easy because we only have PET bottles and HDPE bottles. So what's coming in to our system is very, very clean. And as I said, we established together with the external partner a recycling facility next door to ours. So we sell everything we collect to them. About half of that is, and they process that, so that about half of that becomes new flakes for the beverage industry. Another that is half of the clear volume, clear bottles. The rest becomes also flakes, but it actually goes into other food trade industry. And then the colored bottles becomes plastic straps or something like that. So everything is actually going out, and we make sure that and that's part of our contract with them, is that everything that we sell to them is mechanically recycled and goes back into use somewhere.
Thank you, Bent. And I think that you said something very important, that the plastics is clean and it's sorted. And that in some sense, that is the base to get a good recyclable material. So I would like to hand over for some final words to Mats before we continue with a more in-depth dialogue between Sweden and the Kazakhstan authorities.
Jessica, sorry, there is one more question, if you don't mind, from our attendees.
Okay,
so,
sorry.
He was asking, or he, I think it looks like he. He's asking how the waste collection system works in the households. For example, in Astana, we have this system of waste collection when two types of cars come and one takes the packaging waste, the other takes food waste. And how it works in Sweden. I think that will be the last question. Thank you.
Yes, maybe should I answer that, Veine, or do you would you like to answer that, Veine?
I can start. Well, basically, I think that when it comes to packaging waste.
Да, мы говорим о отходах упаковки. Сбор организован, как вот Генрик уже рассказывал ранее. У нас есть различные станции по сбору вторсырья и по сбору различных компонентов отходов по упаковке. Это пластиковая упаковка, металл, бумага, стекло, стеклянная тара. Это все пункты сбора. Это означает, что по другим типам отходов есть также отдельный сбор, за который отвечают муниципальные органы, и за другие компоненты, которые более нет.
It does include some packaging which was not sorted out from the very beginning, but this rest fraction are going to waste energy. So this is how we achieve the total recycling rate of something like 52% or something like that.
Thank you, Veine. And the organic waste we turn into biogas, and the biogas is used for example, vehicle fuels and fertilizer that goes back to the agricultural land. And then we have the incineration part, and we incinerate for energy, waste to energy, and the energy is used for electricity, and also the heat is used for our no, I lost my word for fjärrvärme.
District heating.
District heating, thank you. Yeah. So everything comes to find the circular models, or not fully circular, but also how to finance this. What is the income? What is the outcome? And what is needed to do between? And this needs to be financed. Yes. So maybe then, since we are running out of time and we will have more opportunities for seminars, Mats, maybe you would like to say some final words.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Уважаемые участники, я бы хотел поблагодарить всех экспертов за выступления и презентации, а также всех
presentations and speeches, and also all the participants for your contribution to the discussion. We had very productive and informative meeting. I would also like to thank our great
что шведские инновационные подходы продолжат способствовать реализации планов, намеченных Казахстаном в области модернизации системы управления отходами. Спасибо и до новых встреч.
Thank you, Mats. And I'm so sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to tell to our attendees that from governmental organizations and from the EPR operator organizations, they should stay because we have another session.
Yes, we do have. Thank you, Laura. And I also would like to say that I'm sorry that I didn't follow the questions and answer, and thank you, Laura, for picking that up. And also thank you so much to Bengt and Henrik to join this session and shared your experience. And I hope that we can come back to more questions if there is other questions raised during this last session.
Certainly, certainly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And also thank you for all the participants that are not the one that will stay for the last session.
Excuse me, Jessica. So this invited speakers, they're not staying?
No.
Oh, okay. So in the session with governmental organization, there will be Vena and you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then.
That was at least what we decided, because we thought that the dialogue should be between with the authorities only, actually. So should we make any changes?
Нужны ли изменения? Нужно ли?
Well, regarding the enforcing producers, we had some questions that we thought we will be asking in this session.
Okay, so we were not aware of that, Laura.
Is it too late to ask our experts to stay on?
Yeah, can we ask, or?
Yes, maybe. Or Vena, what do you think? Can we cover it?
We can try to cover it, I think, because these are most general questions and not so detailed about the system itself. I think we can cover that.
Yeah, so on the way it must have been some misunderstanding, but we continue with the last session, and we cover the questions, me and Vena, and if there is any additional questions, we will go back to the experts and come back to you in written.
Начинается сессия, где участвуют представители государственного органа, Министерства экологии и управлений при акиматах, также представители из организаций, которые занимаются администрированием системы РОП. Поэтому спасибо вам большое. Мы надеемся, что сегодняшний вебинар был полезный. И на следующей сессии остаются только представители госорганов. Спасибо. А также вот представители ассоциации также могут остаться. То есть Шамбулат, вот я вижу, и Батырбек был, да, подключен. Так.
Алло, я.
Джумабеков Дулат, это кто? Извините, пожалуйста. Вы не подписаны. Вы из какой организации? Просто в нашем списке вас нету. Так, Мансур Ушубаев.
Дулат Джумабеков — это руководитель Clean City, руководитель управления.
Ага. Ну, как бы не госорган, да? Так. Так. Ну, вроде остались те... Так, Марина Гальцер — это переводчица,
Это
да?
переводчики, да. А Мурат среди участников.
Так, я думаю, что остались только представители госоргана. И... Так,
Вот,
а где Мансур? Мансур тоже вышел, да? Так.
А вот среди участников Мурат — это кто?
Это просто участник и сборщик, кажется.
Простите, я не расслышал. Тоже представитель госоргана?
Кажется. Это, кажется, сборщик. Он не является представителем госоргана, насколько нам известно. То есть в этой же сессии мы же с регулятором только ведем вопрос-ответы. Так.
Так, все, остались.
Шимбулат, да, Шимбулат, вы как? У вас вопросы есть? В принципе, это то, что мы до этого обсуждали. Шимбулат, вы нас слышите? Вот Шимбулат здесь участвует, он является представителем Ассоциации производителей. Также предлагал организацию собственной системы. Тогда я, наверное, начну. Сейчас вот Шурбаев что-то, он вышел, может переподключиться. У нас вот проблема в том, что на законодательном уровне есть собственная система, но в этом подзаконном акте указано, что у этих производителей продуктов должны быть свои оборудования, да, для переработки отходов. Вот поэтому производители у нас в Казахстане, они вообще не заинтересованы в том, чтобы собственную систему иметь. Им легче доплатить утильсбор за упаковку на счет оператора РОП, и все на этом получается. А дальше уже оператор РОП распределяет вот эту сумму между сборщиками, транспортировщиками и переработчиками. Вот здесь как быть? То есть на законодательном уровне поставить требования, чтобы было. Перевод же у нас есть, или мне на английском сказать? Я просто говорю, чтобы наш кусок мы тоже слышали.
I am speaking Russian for our government authorities to understand.
На законодательном уровне нам как быть в Казахстане? То есть обязать их, чтобы они собственную систему поставили?
Thank you, Laura. According to the program, we actually only have 5 minutes left in the meeting, and Veine needs to leave. So we will try to answer these questions, and then maybe we can continue a few more minutes. And then maybe we have to get back to this issue. But please, maybe Veine, would you like to start to elaborate a bit on the issue here?
Yes, absolutely. What we learned today is some experience from Sweden, which are basically more or less the same in Europe, I would like to say, when it comes to the introduction of the EPR on packaging waste. We are very much willing to discuss the outline of the existing or maybe also the future legislation in Kazakhstan, of course, together with the ministry and other people involved. But I think that is something we need to do on a separate basis, because it's quite an extensive issue, and we, in order to be able to give some advice to the authorities or other stakeholders in Kazakhstan. I think we need to know more and understand more about the system in Kazakhstan so that we can compare that to the existing system in Sweden and elsewhere in Europe. And from that, we can have a new dialogue and more deeply go into this kind of question that you are raising, Laura, because I don't feel comfortable to just like that give a nice and quick answer, because it's very delicate and very complicated issue, and we have to be humble in order to understand what is the situation on the ground in Kazakhstan and elsewhere.
Maybe I can add, if we look at Sweden, as we have said before, we are obliged in our legislation to implement the EU directives. And when the EU directives on producer responsibility came up, it was up to us then how to implement it and how to solve it. And I think that what you can bring with us today, I agree with Veine, we cannot say you should do like this and not like this, but to see to build the system that should be managed over time and also sustained over time, it's important to look at the angles. What kind of flow of this material do we have in the system? What can we get out of the products from these products? And then build a system that actually can be managed with this economic value that you can get into the system. And after doing that study, you know if the producers can do this alone, or if it needs to be like a joint responsibility that they support to get bigger flows and to get the economy in this running over time. So I think there are a lot of answers actually in the presentations today on the mindset and the angle, how to start working with these issues.
Okay, thank you. Then another one more question. So in Sweden, as we got to know, the first DRS system was implemented and then EPR system. But in Kazakhstan, it's vice versa. First, we have this EPR system and a DRS system is not implemented yet. And also we have this unsuccessful experience of Russia. When they implemented EPR, they had a cheating in the system. So when they calculated, collected all the data, it turned out that they collected more than it was put in the market. So it's obviously showing the cheating. And in order to prevent this cheating in the system, in Kazakhstan, it was decided that there will be one EPR operator that will be responsible for all of this. But in a legal level, these producers are, they have a right to have their own system. But there is a kind of one requirement that they should have their own equipment. So when it comes to this own equipment in Sweden, when they started this, they had their own equipment that was in the balance of the producer. Like, it's very interesting to know, because if to look from the economic perspective, it's not beneficial for these producers to have their own equipment when it comes to recycling. So we have these kind of obstacles in Kazakhstan.
Yes, I understand. Veine.
I think I can try to ask this question quite short. First of all, as you said, in Kazakhstan, you first establish the EPR, and then you discuss the deposit refund system, and in Sweden we have the vice versa. I don't think that make such a big difference, but it can do, because now in many European countries they also started with the EPR, And now they wanted to introduce the DRS system, which are, so we can see, much efficient when it comes to recycling rates, and also can give more clean material. And therefore, sometimes it becomes kind of a conflict, because these EPR system, they imagine that if they introduce a new DRS system, it will dilute their own business model, more or less. So, but of course, this is a political system how to do. But nevertheless, we can now see that from countries to countries in Europe, we will have now additional new DRS system above the old, let's say, EPR system. So this is the way we can see forward. And the reason for that was described quite well by Henrik Nilsson before, because in order to reach specifically the higher recycling rates for plastic, it will be very difficult to do that within the frame of the old BRING system. And you need some more incentives, and that will be this deposit refund system, which gives the right incentives in order to increase the recycling rates. The second question about who should own the equipment. I mean, in the Swedish, and I would say the European system, there is no obligation for the EPR system operators to own their own equipment, collection vehicles or sorting facilities. They can do whatever they want. Sometimes, like in Sweden, for example, the glass recyclers, they own their own equipment. And nowadays also the plastic recyclers, as Henrik Nilsson described, we have this new plant, which is owned by the producers. But for other sources, the activities, so to say, are being outsourced to the market, to waste and recycling companies. And the way they do this is they can decide by their own. It is not regulated in the law, the way they should operate the system. And this is also true for the municipal waste system. It is up to the municipality to decide whether they will want to do it in-house with their own equipment, or whether they do it outsourced to waste contractors. So it's free, so to say. The important thing is that the responsibility still lays at the producers when it comes to producer responsibility, or at the municipality when it comes to the municipal responsibility. Thank you.
And I also, one thing that Bengt mentioned that is really important in this is the communication and the involvement of the inhabitants, because they are the one that actually should sort and use this system and make sure that all the recycling products is put on the right place. So in our law, we don't say how you should do it. We only say that it should be done. We need to fulfill this. And then how you do it, the regulators, they don't care. So in this case, the producers has taken the lead and say, we take the lead and we do it jointly. And to do it jointly, we establish this organization.
I see. In Kazakhstan, unfortunately, we have a high level of corruption, and how to prevent this cheating in the system. It's one of the main problems when we talk about giving the leadership to the producers, and how to ensure that the data that they will be reporting to the government will be accurate. I mean, they will not be adding up some numbers. So this is a problem when it comes to this producer-owned system.
Yes, I understand. And this is also, where is the flow of the money? So to build the system and follow the money, and then it needs to be a comprehensive system, because the producers, if we should say that they would get paid from the government out of a report, we have recycled this much material, of course you have a risk for corruption. But if they are responsible for them by themselves, then maybe the risk is limited. But this is also something to take into account, of course. And
maybe I can add that in the Swedish system or the European system, the risk for corruption of, let's say, governmental money is not at stake. The problem is that there might be some free riders, meaning producers who are not engaged in the system. They are going below the floor or somewhere else. You cannot see them, and they are not contributing to the cost, which have to be covered for the system. That is the problem, and that is why I said earlier that enforcement of this is very important in order to bring all the producers into a system. They have to be part of a producer's responsible organization. That is the important thing. But then, of course, how they use their own money, the government they are not involved in that because they are their money. And therefore the risk of corruption in our system is very low, but the risk of free riders can be tremendous. So it's very important different because there are no free money, so to say.
No.
I'm sorry, but I have to leave and we will have to continue this dialogue, and you can do that, of course, but I have another meeting, I'm sorry, in a few minutes.
Thank
and
you.
I have to make a short break.
Yes.
Thank you, Vena.
Thank you very much.
So Mansour also said that he had to leave because he had another meeting, and he asked if they can forward their questions in written.
Yes,
so,
of course they can. Of course they can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So another question, the last, I think. So when we discussed this kind of questions about producer-owned system with beverage producers, they said that we will be collecting all kind of beverage packaging, not only our
виды упаковок
that we produced. And then we will be reporting to the government that we collected like 50% of like mass and so on. And here, the representative of the Return Park said that there are several kind of types of packages, right? They are identified. So when it comes to this identification of packaging from different producers, like how it's done in Sweden, like if the producer collects not only his packaging waste, but also packaging waste of other producers, will it be counted as if they completed their task, or?
No, but it's impossible for a producer to only take care of their own packaging. And this is the base that the producer has gone together, because they produce the packaging, they are spread. And if you should have a system where one single producer, the Coca-Cola company, should only collect Coca-Cola bottles, the Pepsi company should only collect the Pepsi bottles, I believe that will be very difficult. But if they come together in a joint system, because the important thing is to collect the bottles and get them back into the system. So in your case, I would say to go back. What is the reason? What is the goal of this legislation? What would you like to achieve? And then find the right way to do it for Kazakhstan. Because to measure this, I believe it will be costly and it will be very difficult. So I should go back to see what is the overall aim. Why do we would like to implement this legislation, and what would we like to achieve?
Okay, thank you, Jessica. So I see here Mansour is connected.
Yeah.
Мансур, у вас есть вопросы? Ну, уже эксперты из Швеции говорят, что уже время вышло. Это Мансур или из управления паров? Есть ли у вас вопросы? Я думаю, что вы можете сейчас задать. У нас сегодня пассивные участники, к моему удивлению. Так, Но они пока ничего не говорят. Я думаю, тогда сам Мансур тогда направит свои вопросы, и мы через посольство Швеции тогда, думаю, что можем получить ответы, да?
Thank you. And I also, in the beginning, in the introduction from Mansour, he also mentioned the electronic waste. So maybe we can come back to that in another session.
Because in the document it was written electronic waste. In the letter, I think, invitation letter, it was written also
Okay.
electronic waste. Yeah. That's why he said that, I think.
Yeah.
But in Kazakhstan, when it comes to electronic waste, it is also a subject for discussion, because some group of people, they are saying that there should be no recycling fee for electronics. The other companies, there are two main companies who are dealing with this electronic waste. They say there should be, and this kind of discussions we have. And it would be also interesting to look at the experience of Sweden when it comes to electronics.
Yeah, and maybe I can ask a question to the ministry. What is your timeline developing this legislation?
Мансур, вы слышите, да? Мансур или ребята из управления по РОПу?
No, then maybe you can get back to us, Laura, with that, because it's important for us to know when also getting back with you with answers and so forth, also other seminars and so forth.
Well, when it comes to the recycling fee for packaging waste, they said that until the end of this month, they should have some picture. And recently we heard that there will be scientific research work on that. So in Kazakhstan, compared with Sweden, our governmental organizations make decisions very quick, and sometimes without any research, sometimes. So in this regard, this kind of webinars, I think, will be very useful for our governmental organizations to make the right decision, argumented decision, like not like we like or we don't like. Sometimes it happens also. In this regard, I just want to thank Mats Foyer, Mr. Mats Foyer, Jessica, Beine, Ruslan, and Aybar. Also our participants and translators. I think we should not waste the time of Jessica. I know that in Sweden they're very good at timing, but in Kazakhstan we like to be late and we like to be not following this program and so on and so forth. But we understand clearly that we should follow the program. And regarding the other questions, we will send you in written these questions, and hopefully they can get answers to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And no problem for me. I have been working out of Sweden so much, so I'm flexible, if I should say like that. And yes, for your comment, your final words, Laura, I think that you got a good idea on how to calculate the price from Henrik during the seminar.
Yes, we were actually discussing this, that it should cover all the expenses. And
yes,
regarding the cost of the system, cost of the system it includes this cost of the collection, cost of the transportation, and recycling.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Mats, would you like to say some words? Maybe we have a few participants still with us.
От имени Посольства Швеции еще раз большое спасибо всем участникам и до новых встреч.
Спасибо большое вам. До свидания.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Så.